We may be going live right now.
Yeah, it says now streaming live.
I think we're live. This is what I said to you. Every time I start a live, I'm like, am I live? Am I live? It's a little bit of a joke. Hi, everybody. This is Elie Benhiyoun, and who's kind of a new friend, which is a lot of fun. How are you doing tonight? Can you hear me, Elie? You're not hearing me.
Hello?
Are you hearing me?
No.
You're not hearing me. Okay.
Hello?
Wait. Yeah, this is classic. Hold on a second. I'm going to unplug this microphone and see if that's better.
No, we're good. We're good. Go ahead. No.
Inability to, okay.
Ah,
now?
I hear you. Yep.
All right, good. All right. I think we're all good to go. I said, this is going to be a lot of fun. This is Elie Benhiyoun. I said that already. I'm saying it again. Elie, it's really nice to have you here.
Yes, thanks for having me on.
I thought this would be such a fun conversation because Elie and I met when we did another radio show together. And what occurred to me in talking to Elie, in addition to the fact that he's fun and interesting, was that he basically has the male perspective on that show Unorthodox. And there's been so much interest in that show and so much discussion about Este's perspective. And I said, well, you could get Este's husband's perspective. But then Elie said, well, actually, I think I may be the male Este. So why don't you just talk about that for a minute?
Well, yeah, in the plot of Unorthodox, I would be Este's character. Although just because of the female-male dynamics in the show, I definitely resonate, like a lot of Yankee's character, the husband. I definitely resonate with that.
So in case anybody's watching who hasn't seen Unorthodox, it's a show about a young, ultra-Orthodox, I don't love that phrase, but it expresses it, right. A young, ultra-Orthodox couple who get married really young. It's a set-up marriage, so they really do not know each other before they get married. The sexual situation is a nightmare, and Este feels trapped in the relationship by the family and by the marriage, and she then leaves to pursue a life in the arts, which is a little bit of an echo. So why don't you sort of now give us a view of your life, Elie?
Okay, so I grew up in the Chabad community, so still classified as ultra-Orthodox. I also hate that term. I always use quotes when I say it. But it is like an insular community in the sense that we're not, exposed to popular culture and, secular education. But it's very different from like the Satmar community in the sense that our dating is not arranged. The marriages aren't arranged, and we do have a lot more like just license and our own agency in terms of like who we date and what happens on the dates. But they are very much intended for marriage. So like anyone that we do date, it's very focused and goes very quickly. And the engagements are very quickly, and there's no socializing. There's no just like getting to know each other just for the sake of getting to know each other. So in my case, I dated for the woman I ended up marrying for a very, very short time, less than 2 weeks. We went on 5 dates. I proposed on the 5th date. Neither of us were ready or prepared for that at all.
How old were you, Elie?
I had just turned 23.
Not so young.
Right. Not 18.
No, seriously, not 18, not 19. I got married at 22, just saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah, totally. Everything that I went through is quite normal.
But I dated my husband for like that.
For how long?
3 years.
Oh, good for you. Oh, so you were pretty young when you started, and then you had the wisdom to, not to seal the deal right away. So then we got married, 2-3 months later.
So they started dating 5 dates later, engaged, married 2 months later. So you're talking probably about 3 months from meeting to marriage.
To wedding night, yeah. And I'm very grateful to this day, and I'm very lucky that I married someone who's a phenomenal human being, and is the mother of our son.
So you
And
were married for 2 weeks and you have a son from that 2-week marriage.
no, we were married for 4 years.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought you said 2 weeks. I was like, whoa. And you got, okay,
No,
that's amazing. Okay.
no.
You were married for
So
4 years.
yeah, we were together for 4 years, and we had a son. We were a year and a half when we separated. My son was a year and a half old when we separated. What I was saying was, before I go into like how difficult the marriage was, I just want to say how grateful I am that she is an incredible person, incredible human being, and the best mother for our son. But I did realize like right away when we got married that like, oh my God, this is totally wrong. This is not the person I meant to be with, and this is a huge mistake. But these are thoughts that I could only keep inside because I thought I was a terrible person for thinking those thoughts, and that I just need to be tough and stick it through. And it took a long time before we started going to therapy and realizing that, like, yes, maybe there are other options.
So, had you dated other people before her?
Yes, I dated two other women before before the person I married, before my ex. Um, Also, only two or three times, and then and it was all in the 6 month period of when I got married. So like from when I first started dating ever was only 6 months before I ended up getting married. So that was also kind of
Now,
wow.
one of the reasons I actually wanted this conversation and I wanted to have you on was because in our previous conversation, you had said something very similar, that you are very grateful to the fact that your wife is such a special person. Like it feels to me like were in a community, it didn't feel right to you, you left, but you have such a lovely attitude. Like you're not angry about it. I mean, maybe you are, but you've come to terms with the fact that it's a community that maybe has different choices than you, or a woman that maybe isn't the right woman for you, but still you feel like you don't pick up a lot of like anger or hostility or resentment, or which makes it easy to have this conversation, because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the most important conversation is about how lifestyles are different without necessarily judging the other lifestyle. And that I feel like becomes like a really piece. So I just want you to know, like, I love that about our
Thank you.
conversation. So,
Yeah, thank you. And I love that you can appreciate that, because I think many people want to place people like myself who've left that lifestyle in a box of like, oh my gosh, you must have been traumatized and you've been enlightened. And I don't, my choices in my own life, I don't place any judgment on people who have made other choices and have decided to maintain that lifestyle. And
or join
I
that lifestyle.
or
That's
join it. Yes, exactly. I've spent my entire life encouraging people to join that lifestyle. It was my career. So yeah, yeah.
so talk to me about what it was like to get married with what I'm assuming is limited sex education,
Mm-hmm.
because that really is an issue in all of these communities. And to be fair, it's not just the ultra Orthodox or the
Oh gosh,
Orthodox
no.
communities. We do a shitty job, excuse my language, in general of doing sex
As
education with
just a
our children.
society. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But that was particularly sheltered because you didn't date a lot, and I assume you weren't really physically sexually active before you got married.
No.
So, what was that like for you, and how do you feel like that impacted on you and impacted on the marriage?
So it is you know, as just like a guy, like a kid, a boy becoming a teenager, I started thinking about sex and being curious about women, um, around 11, 12 years old. So I was fairly educated, I would say self-educated by
By
the
porn?
time.
By porn?
Exactly. And that's what I'm getting to, which is I wonder, I've said to my friends sometimes that like by the time I got married, I wonder what like my parents or some like my teachers thought I knew about sex. Like what were they assuming I knew about what to do on my wedding night? and because no one has had a conversation with me at all about it. It was
Oh,
never brought up.
you didn't have a Khatan teacher? You didn't have
So up until the engagement, there's no conversation. Then there are classes. But if you're dating somebody and you have supposedly no information about that, so I wonder, but of course they know that we know, right? So the only place to get it from is porn. And this is where the negative relationship with sexuality begins, is that every single time you're curious about sex and about, in my case, women, I was not only lying and hiding something, right? Because when you're watching porn, you're usually hiding and you're usually lying about it. So that's already, you feel miserable. But number three, you're doing something that is sinful and horrible and the worst thing ever. And so it's very but you want it so badly. So it's very complicated by the time, you're 23 years old, you're getting married, and now this marriage is supposed to be the best thing to ever happen, right? And sex on the wedding night is the best thing and it's really confusing. There's a lot to unpack after that.
No, I think that's it's such a good, succinct, powerful way that you're describing this, Elie, because it's so complicated. I have a friend in sex education who says learning about sex from porn is like learning how to drive by watching The Fast and the Furious, right? Like, it's just absurd. And and then I talk to parents who are like, oh, my kid doesn't watch porn. Really? Your 14-year-old hasn't been watching porn since he or she was 11, but let's say he. That is ridiculous. And the only way to help your kid understand it is to be able to talk about it. So, but parents they're so ambivalent themselves and they're so scared of it themselves, they don't deal with it at all. And then that's what people have. Like, that is what people have. They have porn. And now you're raising that secondary line, which is not just that it's terrible education sexually, also it's just rife with guilt and shame. And then everything to do with sex is twisted into the guilt and shame. So you head into this marriage and that's all you know. And then what happens in your classes? What happens in your Khatan classes?
So that was actually a very positive experience. I'm
looking down because I just want to see if we have questions. So.
Oh, sure. Go for it. Yeah, more questions the better. So that was a very positive experience. I had a phenomenal teacher in LA who ended up becoming a mentor to me and was actually like my ex and I's like marriage counselor throughout our entire marriage, and guided us up until the divorce. And then when the divorce happened, this is a whole other live that we should do. He felt that it was above his pay grade and kind of dropped me. So that, he was, but in terms of preparing me and my friends who went to him for marriage, he was like the best thing that ever happened. And I was just very lucky that not a lot of people have that kind of teaching experience. And I think for the women, especially, the teachers aren't as good. At least this is going back 10 years. I don't know if things have changed.
Not so much. So do you feel, and by the way, I want to tell anybody watching, if you have questions, I actually can see them, just put them in the comments and I put them in there. So do you feel like, did you talk to him about the porn thing?
Well, we didn't talk about porn, but we were talking about sex very directly. And we were talking about it in a way that was human and that was like natural. And he was very, he wanted us to feel good about it. He wanted us to have a good sex life. He was very just like direct, and he wasn't couching the conversation in halachic terminology, because the classes, to be clear,
Jewish
they're
law,
not just
in terminology of Jewish law, right?
Correct.
A lot of times teachers do that, right?
Yeah, so the classes aren't only about like human anatomy and what to put what where, but it's also like about the laws, the Jewish laws related to marriage and relationships and sexuality. So he made it his business that this wasn't just going to be about laws, and it was going to be about like, how to have a real experience with another person. And he actually contacted me like on his own a week into the marriage, like, hey, what's going on? How's it going? And we were going through some stuff, and he helped us, and he was there for us like throughout like the next 4 years.
So how
yeah.
did it go?
So this is what's funny. So I could only speak from my experience. The way that it went for me
Because
was,
when you saw that series Unorthodox and Esty was having such a hard time, my heart was going out to her husband as well. Like I just felt like, oh my God. Anyway, so yeah.
yeah, he's really portrayed as a villain. I mean, he a very I think sympathetic villain, but in the sense that he's like kind of railroading her through sex. But it's obvious that he is very sincere and believes that he is doing what he needs to be doing, you know, what he was taught to be doing. And then is just thrown into a position where he has to make these decisions that he's not equipped to make. So with in my situation, I was lucky that there wasn't any like issues in terms of like actual like that like sex was okay. Not just okay, but I'm saying there weren't any issues in terms of sexuality. The issues were more in terms of our relationship and chemistry. So where I relate to Yankee is in the sense where you find yourself like you did everything right. You did what everyone told you was the right move forward, and yet you find yourself like it's not right. It's really not right and deeply not right. And the other person is a good person and you're a good person and no one is doing anything that is wrong. And who do you go to and how do you and it's a very lonely and painful situation to be in. So my situation wasn't like parallel the unorthodox situation exactly in terms of like dad issues, like having sex, what to do, you know. In our case, it was more the relationship was so like not feeling right.
Can you speak to that more or not really?
Yeah. I mean, I can speak for myself. I can't speak for my ex, obviously, and I
Obviously, you're the one I'm talking to, right?
yeah, yeah. And I want to respect her privacy and her experience. But for me, it was a sense of like um, you know, not um, hmm, you know, you come in the way it works in the community that I'm from. So the first year of marriage, you go study in Kollel, which is like, you know, you essentially are in a study hall and you're, learning text all day. In the meantime, my wife is at work. And that goes on for, in our community for the first year. And I would come home after a day of honestly wasting my time. I wasn't learning anything. Um, and she had been working all day and she had also just prepared this meal, beautiful dinner all laid out, you know, for her
That's
new
her
husband.
job. Because that's her job.
Yeah. And we sit down for this meal that is beyond like what a regular dinner would be. And there's just no there's no connection. And and I would feel so terrible about the fact that there isn't a connection because I love people. I love talking to people. I pride myself in connecting with people. And here I am with my wife, who I told myself I am in love with and that I need to be in love with, it's just unaccessible. And so I would, you know, after dinner, would go and wash the dishes and drown myself in music and beer and just try to remove myself, you know, mentally from my house. You know, and it took a while for me to be. My friends started noticing that I was depressed, but like I would just blame it on the fact that I had nothing to do and that I wasn't working. But it was the relationship, and yeah, eventually we started going to therapy, and
Was
it
she
took.
feeling this way also?
I don't know if she was experiencing it in the same way that I was, but there was a mutual sense that something is wrong and we need to do something about it, that this can't continue this way.
Did you feel like it spilled off into the sex life as well? Because it feels like, or the sex life was spilling into. See, I'm coming from like a little bit of a different perspective than a lot of people. I often feel like people's sex life sort of informs the relationship as well as the relationship informing the sex life. I think we as a society tend to, privilege the relationship, the talking relationship over the physical relationship. And so, but I think they go two ways. So I'm just curious about
Mm-hmm.
your experience with that.
It did because of a lack of connection. Um, you know, there were less frequent times that we were interested in having sex, that we would get to that place. When we did get to that place, it was very rewarding and very fulfilling. And that is not something that that we suffered with. But because, and then later in the marriage, when there was just a lot of strain on the relationship because of like, it becomes more and more toxic and dysfunctional. That's when it's like it's almost not a reality, non-existent, because just because you're not talking, you're not there. So
You're not present, right?
yeah.
So how and what happened in terms of your life? Do you feel like you kind of, because you're not really part of that community anymore? Did you first separate from your wife and then leave the community, or did you feel like you were sort of leaving the community and then leaving your wife behind? And I want to spend time talking about the Yiddish Repertory Theater because you're involved with that, and that really is the unorthodox connection. So I don't want to lose
Yeah.
that. But let's
Okay.
let's just spend a minute talking about this first, and then yeah.
So I don't think of myself as like someone who's left the community, because I still think of it very much as my community, my closest friends, and people who I work with on a daily basis, and that I consider to be my ecosystem as a human being, that nurture me as a human, are in that, from that community. So I changed my lifestyle, I like to say, and that happened very much after the divorce. So through the process of getting divorced, I realized how much agency I had let go of in my own life, and that I didn't even realize that I didn't have that agency. So getting divorced kind
How
of
did you
like,
realize that? Because when you talk about that, like that is very fundamental to the more religious communities. You have to let go of a certain amount of your agency. But that is a very good way to articulate it that most people can't articulate. Like what allowed you to come to terms with the fact that you needed more agency?
it
Or that you
was.
were missing it? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, honestly, I had gotten to a place in my own personal growth where I felt like I was so disintegrated and so depressed, that it couldn't possibly really get worse. I mean, and really everything was going right. I was married, I had a kid, I was a rabbi of a thriving community, and there was nothing outwardly wrong, and I had to really come to terms with the fact. I remember telling my therapist, like, what, you want me to get divorced, give up my community, and cut my beard all in one day? And he was like, whoa, I never said that. And I walked out of that session like, oh my God, like I drew that thread, that being a rabbi, I remember the day that I became a rabbi and I wasn't happy. I felt fake. I used to tell everyone in the community, don't call me rabbi. Like, I'm your friend. I'm here as, a teacher, as a friend, as a leader, but I just, being a rabbi didn't feel like me. And I also had to face the very real reality that I was struggling with my religious practice already. And this kind of like noticing, that these were all connected. And I didn't have a plan of how I would move forward. I had no idea that 3-4 years later I'd be talking with you on a live, or that I would have been in the Yiddish Theater in Manhattan or anything like that. It was just a decision that every single day I would live it as I see fit, and it was a new reality for me.
And does it feel better?
Oh my God, I'm like such a better person. I've never been more me and more like alive and happy, every single day since then.
So let's talk about the Yiddish Repertory Theater.
Yes.
Tell us what it is and what's going on with it and what that's like.
So for sure. So if anyone is on from New Yiddish Rep, like, hey, uh, so it is the loveliest community of artists and actors, performers, in New York. And it's run by David Mandelbaum and Amy Coleman. David Mandelbaum is the Zadie in Unorthodox. So
He's the one
Esty
at the table, right?
at
When
the
Esty's
table.
not, yes, yes, yes.
So he and his wife is Amy Coleman, our acting teacher and singing teacher, writing teacher as well.
Really, it's really like a family thing, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean it's a small, it's a real Jewish operation. It's very
is that the
small,
one who
very
used to
tight knit.
sing? I'm trying to think of like she listened to
Amy?
records, right? Like Esty in the movie was listening to somebody on her family's music, right? That's how
Oh,
she learned. That's
um,
how she learned how to sing.
yes, but no, Amy herself is not in the show.
Okay.
Her husband
Oh, I
David is.
gotcha. Yes.
Yes, but another teacher of ours, Gera, he's also a phenomenal acting teacher. He is the dad, the one that's a little bit,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The alcoholic.
exactly.
Mhm.
And then the aunt is his wife, Ronit.
Oh, that's great.
So yes, and then the Rebbe is also an actor, more senior actor in the theater company.
That's
And then like,
hysterical. It's like you
yeah,
have the whole family at the theater company.
pretty exactly. Yeah, and then in the show, and then my friends Malky and Melissa, also in the theater company, are in it. So it was so cool to see them like on the screen. I mean, it's crazy. And we basically, before COVID, we were doing classes in there's a little studio in Midtown, and we had 2 acting classes a week, writing class, a singing class, and we would do cabarets on Saturday
It's all
nights.
Yiddish. It's all Yiddish.
So the plays that we study are Yiddish plays and also English plays, but the performances are Yiddish, Jewish themed. Yes. But like the classes themselves are in English. Like our writing class is English, and but we study a lot of Yiddish plays, and
So
yeah,
do you see yourself as an actor?
I'm studying acting. Yes.
So you'd like to be acting more.
Correct. My primary thing is writing and singing. And I've been teaching myself how to play guitar.
I see it in the
And
background right there.
oh, yep, there it
I
is.
wish we had more time. I'd say you should sing for us, but we don't. So yes, right. Anyway.
Another, we'll do it comes it's another
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So wait, so usually you're there twice a week?
No, we had classes 4 times a week, so now we do it on Zoom. We've been meeting on Zoom throughout the whole COVID. I've been on and off because of stuff that's been going, that I've been involved in. But yeah, like we have a class tomorrow night, and we'll have another class, on Friday. Like it's all on Zoom now.
So now I'm curious, like, why are you doing specifically Yiddish theater as opposed to just sort of general theater, or I don't know, Chicago City Limits? Like why are you? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I would love to do regular theater too. If you have any advice how to get there, I'm all
that's
ears.
not my area, but I'll think about it.
But a friend of mine, I was involved in a creative community called Chavria. I still am. I was writing for them and just involved in like the community leadership. And a friend of mine in this community, Bunya, she was like, hey, I go to the Yiddish Theater where we have classes for writing and acting. I was like, oh my God, everything that I want, everything I'm interested in. And I just started going, and it was the most rewarding.
Do you speak Yiddish?
I do, yeah.
Because a lot of Chabad do not speak Yiddish, right? Or is that?
That is seen as kind of like the collapse of the, officially we all speak Yiddish very well. But yeah, Chabad is not as intense about it. But I studied in Yiddish since I was 6 years old, and I translated in Yiddish for GEM, the Chabad like media company. So yeah,
Wow.
I'm a Sephardic Jew who speaks Yiddish and is in a Yiddish theater company.
Do you speak any languages that are more Sephardic friendly, like Spanish or?
Well, French. I speak French.
Oh, you speak French.
And French and Hebrew, and I understand a little bit of Arabic and Farsi. So
yeah. Oh yeah, you
a
got
lot going on. Yeah.
So we have to finish up in a minute. It's gone like so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm just curious, if you were going back and giving yourself advice, or giving somebody just like you advice at age 20 or 21 in that community, what do you think you'd say?
I mean, I would say that being who you are and embracing that authentically is is not a path that leads to disaster, won't turn you into some monster that just is, just like let out of a cage. And specifically when it comes to sex, I thought that if I, am let loose, I'll suddenly, like, who knows what I'll be interested in, where I'll go, and the dangers. And I've only become a better person in accepting my relationships, and embracing sexuality, and embracing, that I love sex, and that I want, a health, to have a great sex life right behind you, that is a good thing, and you are a better person for it, and not a worse person. And that's I mean, I wish I heard that more, and and had the tools to pursue that more when I was younger. But
Do you feel like that was
yeah.
at the core or a central piece of what was going on with you in terms of not feeling like you could be authentic?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it's unattainable, that it's something that I can't access, that if I lived a different life, I used to say all the time, like, oh yeah, if I had another life, this is what it would look like. Because I thought the life I'm in, I'm destined to live. There's this sense of destiny, and that, being a rabbi was so, and being, connected to my religious practice was so deeply ingrained in like who I was and who I'm meant to be, that doing anything different felt impossible. And I remember my sister saying to me once, like, you can leave. Like it is possible. I really didn't believe it was. And it was only my own choice stopping me. And that is something that is, it's so hard to get through when someone feels stuck, but it's true.
It's
It's
like an
really true.
invisible fence. When you see the invisible
Mm-hmm.
fences that, try to keep in whatever, it's like there's an invisible fence there. What's striking about what you're saying and what really hits home to me is that I feel like that message that somehow your sexuality is such a scary thing, like that is, I feel like that is, it's such a, like it's such a, like, box that we put ourselves in, that, and I feel like parents do it to kids unintentionally, teachers do it with
Mm-hmm.
students, like this idea that if we let people be their sexual self, like that there'd be something so terrible that would happen, that it would unleash this power in the world. Like it feels to me like people are just scared of sexuality. It's such a, it's, I do believe it's so core and so much the essence of people, but that it's so less scary once you like allow yourself to actually look at it. Like it just
Yeah.
feels like it's going to be so scary. So everybody kind of squashes it and cuts it. And then it becomes scary because then it becomes this power that's being like shut down into this little tiny space as opposed to allowed for, the freedom to express itself. And that it won't be so scary if you just let it go. And so I mean, that's sort of what, like you were saying, like you were, it's like you
Yeah.
were so scared of your own sexuality that it would just, it sort of explode and take the whole world and you with it, and it would only be bad. And in the end, it wasn't.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's so misunderstood about people who talk openly about sexuality, is there, because it's talked about so little and it's such a taboo. So the people out there talking about it are basically people like you who are educated and educators, in it. And then you have the media. You basically have entertainment, which is such an unhealthy, toxic version of sexuality. And I know I struggle with this, and I think that there is a very misunderstood nuance, and it's not such a nuance, between those who are exploiting sexuality and those who are actually embracing it as a healthy, positive lifestyle. And I know that I've made this mistake in the past, that like, oh, if I'm okay with different kinds of relationships, then I must be a player. I must be a bro. I must be. I'm not. I'm not that person. But so there is a healthy way and an honest way and a refined way to approach the subject without covering it up, without making it a taboo. So I'm so grateful for people like you who I could, talk to about this, in a way that is more refined, but also so open.
Well, I really, really thank you for coming on and being so honest. If people want to follow you, because Elie is an artist and an actor and a lot of other things, where do they find you?
So I'm on Facebook and
Clearly,
Instagram.
right?
Yes, exactly. E Benhiyoun. And
Wait, you
then I
better
also,
spell that because people aren't going to find it. Oh, it's
yeah.
on the screen.
So
Yeah.
yeah, EBenhiyoun. And people could also message me, directly, text me. And I also run my own creative studio. I specialize in branding, so people can check me, just follow, go to my website, which is my name, eliebenhiyoun.com. And yeah, happy to
Great.
talk to anyone who's curious.
And I told Elie earlier that all of my followers on Instagram were like, "How come you're not doing this on Instagram?" So in a couple months we will, or a couple whatever, at some point in the not too distant, I was just booked out on Instagram. So in the not too distant future, we'll get Elie on Instagram as well. So thank you so much, Elie.
Yeah,
And
my pleasure.
I'm gonna stop the live, but I want to say good night and thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you guys.